Now on Out and About Nashville.
It's been a community that we have looked to foster ever since we got here.
The Mockingbird is working to fly in the face of adversity during the COVID-19 pandemic.
The signage we've had to put up about social distancing.
Out and About Nashville talks with owners Mikey Corona and Brian Riggenbach about how they've managed to keep the doors open for the LGBTQ community during a global pandemic. Out and About Nashville starts now. Brian Sullivan reporting for Out and About Nashville. We're here at the Mockingbird, a staple LGBTQ-owned restaurant, to talk to them about some of the adjustments that they made after the COVID-19 crisis hit. Mikey and Brian say that they have done everything that they possibly can and put measures in place to make sure that patrons and staff are as safe as possible.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Welcome to Mockingbird.
This is beautiful.
Thank you so much. It's our baby, and it's starting to flap its wings once again. So we're excited.
I love it.
Thank you. It's flocking gorgeous.
Mikey, Brian, thank you so much for sitting down with us. I really appreciate you hosting us today.
Yeah, for sure. Welcome to our restaurant.
So it's beautiful, first of all.
Thank you.
Who did the decor?
It was a mixture. So we have a partner named London, and he designed all of the Morph restaurants. And so Brian, myself, and him kind of put our heads together. We had these three creative minds coming together to make all of this happen. So it's a little bit of all of us in it.
It's so gorgeous.
Thank you.
And I love the bird, the logo for the Mockingbird. Does Katniss Everdeen ever eat here?
Brian designed the logo for the restaurant.
It's beautiful.
His art school education has really paid off there.
Yeah, finally paid off.
I love it, and that is just...
Yeah, that's from a Chicago designer, buddy of ours that did this for us. So that's his work, Philip Lance. It's absolutely awesome. It's so abstract initially when you see it, and then when you get up close, you're like, oh, that's a bird head. And so it's fitting.
Yeah. So can you guys walk us through sort of what happened when the health department and municipalities and government first started putting restrictions in restaurants? What happened here?
Well, we made the decision to close our restaurant before they put that restriction in place. We saw what was happening, and for the safety and concern of our entire staff, shut it down before they even demanded us to. That was something we were kind of on the forefront with. We had a discussion with our business partners, and that was a company-wide thing to shut it down. So March 17th, which I believe is a Wednesday, is whenever we ceased operations and paused everything, and immediately let our staff know that they needed to go file for unemployment straight away, and whatever resources that we had still available was completely all of theirs. And so I know Brian went into the kitchen and did some things.
We distributed, there was a lot of perishable food that we couldn't, we didn't know how long we were going to be closed, or, I think it was new for everyone. So, all the fresh produce and everything that we were able to distribute, we gave that to all the employees in big baskets and stuff. So that was, a good way of kind of paying it forward. But then it was kind of just bunker down and wait, do little projects that you always have. I'm going to paint that wall, or finish little things here and there, and organize and clean and twiddle your thumbs. And
there wasn't much twiddling of thumbs.
There's always something to do. There's a million things that are always on the list. And then we did open up for curbside, and so we did that, which was.
It was in the beginning. It was
It's all right.
It was all right. There was a lot of our regulars and locals that wanted to support, and not a lot of restaurants were doing curbside from the get. Everybody kind of did stuff at their own pace, and just kind of were filling out the waters. We were closed completely for about 2 weeks while we tried to reconfigure and go to the drawing board to see what we needed to do, as this was all uncharted territories for all businesses, for everybody. And so we did curbside for, I believe, Saturdays and Sundays, or Fridays and Saturdays. We kind of mixed it up each week and kept people aware of it via social media. And we tried a various amount of styles. We did like family style a couple of times. We did individual.
Kind of really mixed it up, changed the menu, worked with what we could get, and try to make the most of it to be able to share with people. And it's like an evolving demand too. It's an entirely new business model, so you kind of have everything figured out. You know generally what to expect or what to do, or you have a sketch framework of what the picture is going to look like. And
well, yeah, because we were 2.5 years old at that time, so we had already.
Or just in the industry as a whole, with 20
whole,
years experience, like you've seen this different models and types of restaurants and everything, and takeout as a concept isn't new, but for us, shifting the entire business model into something like that was definitely a big learning experience.
For sure, because we were never a very to-go heavy restaurant. It's just our place is more of the type that people like to be in the atmosphere, for the decor, just for the vibe, for our staff's kick-ass personalities. And so that was difficult for us. And like I said in the beginning, there was a nice surge in support from locals. And then about 3 weeks in, it kind of just dwindled down substantially, because more restaurants also started to open up. But then it's not sustainable for individuals to, locals to eat out every meal of the day to try to support all of their local restaurants. It just is not, it's not sustainable. And so it did dwindle off, and we had to quickly scurry. That's why when Brian says we were twirling our thumbs, I was like, no, I think you forgot. We were like
a kid.
Yeah, we were like beating our heads against the wall trying to figure out, like, okay, what can we do to kind of get that surge up again? Like, how can we be a bit more interesting than what's being offered, at XYZ? And, you then get to realize, as we talked to a lot of them, like, we were all in the same boat, actually. Like, we were just fighting for crumbs, basically. And it was and is not a good place to be in.
Coming up, Mikey and Brian recall the painful moment when the pandemic hit.
First news of it happened, we sat with our business partners, and they're like, guys, this is going to be the next move. And we were all on page with it. We just kind of all sat in the room, and it was quiet. There was definitely tears that were shed.
In going through that, and you said that you had over 20 years experience in the restaurant business. Is this the first time owning a restaurant for both of you?
Correct.
Yeah.
So I would imagine owning that restaurant, and when this happened, I would have so much anxiety. Like, what is going to happen, and how are we going to, keep our employees and all of that? What went through your mind when that happened?
All of that.
I mean, like, no, for sure. It was, you want to take care, we've spent 2.5, almost 3 years building this really incredible team of employees, and you become a family and you want to take care of every single one of them. But as you kind of unfold into reopening, there's only so many positions available. So those jobs just don't exist anymore. In the kitchen, it's, less than a third of what we used to run with. So, I mean, it's tricky. It's hard.
It's really hard. Hard is like that's definitely an understatement. I mean, when the first news of it happened, we sat with our business partners and they're like, "Guys, this is going to be the next move," and we were all on page with it. We just kind of all sat in the room and it was quiet. There was definitely tears that were shed. And it was like, this is just what we have to do now if we want to be a home to welcome them in the future. And so, like, with that being known, it made it a little bit more easy to progress with having to let everybody go as a, it's not goodbye, it's a see you later type of situation. But it was all of that. It was anxiousness. It was like desperation. It was like sadness, and then there were little glimmers of of hope every now and then with like, oh, we just had like a day where we had 50 to go orders, that's amazing, and then the next day would be like 2. So it's just a roller coaster ride of emotions and of feelings and just everything, and being a married couple that is in the same business. It's not like one of us was in a different arena where we can pull each other out of the trenches. We were both riding the same waves at the same time, which was doubly challenging.
Sort of exhausted a lot of resources that they had. When we opened back up, we had to do it right at the right time because we could not survive closing again.
Correct.
So were you experiencing that thought as well?
I think we still
are.
It looks as though Nashville's numbers have been trending downwards this last week, but it's still kind of a rocky roller coaster. I wouldn't say that. I mean, I'm not confident that we're on the downside of this currently. I wish that we could say that, and I had all expectations that by now we would, in August, we'd be not through it, but definitely a lot further along. We're like phasing in different services, so I thought we'd be doing brunch, maybe lunch, and none of that's on the horizon.
No.
It's very optimistic to think that'll be anytime soon.
Yeah.
So right now you all are just doing only dinner?
Correct.
Only lunch, brunch, dinner. We even had some late night. We were full-fledged just going. And it just came to a complete halt. And so, like you mentioned earlier, the same woes and concerns that the other small businesses and LGBT-owned businesses, if we were to have a second shutdown, it would really, really be a gut punch. Again, a second gut punch because we're already operating off of hopes and prayers, basically, to be honest.
And they're hard to put in an envelope and send to the mortgage company.
They are.
Yeah.
And so we're having to be real creative. We have meetings with our business partners, and there's sometimes we have to figure out like what can wait to be paid and what has to be paid right now. And we're doing that shuffling every single day, and it's a tough game to be in, especially whenever you're in the hospitality world, because you have to, you can't sit behind a desk and be on a telephone and kind of fake that presence of like everything is great. You're in front with public, and so they can see when something is not right. So you really have to kind of put that on the back burner when those doors are open, and just give it all you got. And that's the stage we're in now.
You had said that you were operating with limited staff.
Correct.
Did you lose any staff when you had to close and then reopen?
Lose as in
As far as people not coming back?
a majority haven't come back.
Yeah.
We haven't. I think there was like a cultural reset as well with the national lockdown, or semi-national lockdown, or piecemeal, whatever happened. But a lot of people took that opportunity to move. I had a couple of people move out of town. Maybe someone
Jumped into a different career
jumped
field.
into a different career. Yeah. So there was a little bit of that, and then the rest is,
We just can't bring them back right now.
yeah, I have 10 people lining up for one job, and it's at the end of the day, that's all it is. So
For sure.
me and my sous chef are doing all of the prep work. We divide that up, and there's no I do all the pastries instead of having a pastry chef. And then we work service and do everything. So that's fine. You do what you have to do to get through, but you also don't have the ability to share the opportunities with other folks.
This sounds like a lot more hours for the both of you. As far as the stress of dealing with that, what are some ways that you both cope? Like, is there a time of the day where you say, work is here?
I think we have like different times for that. Brian's is whenever at the end of the day when we go home, it's like no work talk. I'm gonna just like get into my zone and that's it. And so he'll do his. Like we just put a studio in one of our bedrooms of the house, and so he uses that as his painting studio to kind of release that. Mine is during the afternoon where I get to go home to the puppies, and like I have like about 30 minutes to 45 minutes with them. I take them for their afternoon walk, and that's my time to just cuddle the shit out of them, and it just reminds me of like, you know what, this is pure love. Like I need this like reset of positivity, and just like that's my reset. And then I come back to work, and then at the end of it, I'm sending emails still and planning like the next day, because running the front of the house is dealing with a lot of not that you don't deal with a lot back there, but like there's a lot of paperwork and emails and whatnot that are more concerned with like the front of the house operations. So we have the two different times of the day that we do that.
Some from annoying reporters.
Those bitches.
So you mentioned a lot of the strain that the Mockingbird was put under. Were you guys able to receive any federal, state, municipal aid in any of this?
We did apply for and receive the PPP loan, and then we were part of the hospitality from the state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
So we were able to fold that into the business model, and it's a huge help.
It's been a lifesaver for sure.
It's a lifesaver, and it's definitely much appreciated. But it's not. It's a Band-Aid on a severed arm. So it needs a little more attention to it's a trauma to the industry.
Correct.
And you can't solve that with an aspirin and a Band-Aid. You need a surgeon and ICU. So I think there needs to be a lot of systemic and structural change, and a lot of injection of new capital funds, and I think it also offers the opportunity to kind of start from scratch and rethink the way that things have been done. Creating new systems, doing things smarter, just reevaluating the way that everything is operated.
Well, I think what this has done is it's unveiled the curtain, the restaurant curtain, and it's let everybody know. It's let the public know. It's let your diners know. These are the margins that we operate off of. They're very slim, and so I think it's been educational for everybody involved. And I think those that are like, foodies or true people that enjoy going out to restaurants have taken notice of that, because we've seen a lot more, I don't want to say appreciation, but a lot more consideration of things whenever individuals are here dining out. It's no longer like a questioning of like, of prices or a questioning of practices. It's a different world. I can say
people do seem to understand a little more what the mystique of the industry has kind of been, and for better or worse, they are razor thin margins. The failure rate is enormous. So, I mean, if you took a lot of the just statistics from the restaurant industry and compared that to any other forestry or any other business model, people would think that you're insane.
For getting involved
like, why
in
would
business.
you do that?
Yeah.
We're gluttons for punishment.
I think I read somewhere, and I apologize if this is incorrect, but I remember it being something like 50% of restaurants failing Indy First.
Correct.
Hmm?
And you guys have been here how long?
It'll be 3 years
Next week.
So you've really beat the odds 3 times.
We have, and we were on set to have like the best year ever. Like, it was like the beginning of March. We're like, oh my gosh, you guys, this is fantastic. Like, we're doing it. We're finally doing it. Because first year, it's a struggle. You're learning.
You're paying off all your loans.
Yeah.
And you just spent all this money opening everything up, and you're implementing all the systems that you have. And
you got your team solidified. You're getting in the groove. Second year, you're in the groove. Like, it's happening. It's great. Third year is like, oh, this is really good. We got it down. We can maybe like start to focus on adding some other fun things to do at the restaurant on top of the operations that we already have going.
Pause.
And
no, 2020
2020
had different plans.
Yeah, Rona came along and was like,
she ain't playing.
No.
Rona is not playing.
Like, whammy. So it was. I mean, it was just not anything that anybody expected, anybody around the world. And we're not alone. And I think that's what makes this like an easier pill to swallow, knowing that everybody is in the same boat that's in our industry.
Coming up on Out and About Nashville, Mikey and Brian weigh in on the financial burden caused by the COVID-19 crisis.
I think a lot of people that are already being pushed out by rising rents and housing costs, and why a lot of people relocated to Nashville. But now that problem is happening here.
Due to human health concerns, if you or a loved one has taken the heartburn medication Zantac or ranitidine and have been diagnosed with cancer, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Call Bart Durham today.
More assistance from Congress, as Congress is deliberating at the time of this interview for the next stimulus package. What would you like to see from them for small businesses and restaurants?
I think if they could work half the amount of hours that we work to solve the problem that we're in, it'd be greatly appreciated. It's
because the payroll tax could be put on pause. That's a big chunk. Another stimulus that didn't have so many restrictions, just to be geared towards using it majorly towards your employees, because if we're not able to use it towards operations, the majority of it, then we don't have employees to pay to take care of.
And I think there's an enormous problem, kind of what we touched on earlier with the unemployment. I have a whole litany of people who are able to work, who want to work, but who cannot work. And it's no fault of their own, but their jobs just do not exist anymore. And perhaps in the restaurant, they'll gradually come into focus a little sooner. But for a lot of the hospitality sectors, for larger scale events, stadiums, big productions, weddings, those aren't going to be happening for a very long time. So all of those people are going to need a lot of help before all of these talent pools just get completely wiped out and dispersed. So you're having a lot of people that are already being pushed out by rising rents and housing costs, and why a lot of people have relocated to Nashville. But now that problem is happening here. So you can't find the talent and the employees. They can't afford to live here. So they need a lot of help. Businesses need a lot of help. We're in the same token, no fault of our own, but we're only operating right now at 50%. It's the maximum that we can do. So that's assuming that we're making 50% of our profit.
Oh, and we're not.
Which is not sustainable in its own, even if we were doing, that.
That would be great if we were to hit that goal. But I think what's difficult is even when we were operating before COVID, we were 40-60. So we were 60% tourists and 40% locals. And since tourism is way down, understandably, people need to be safe, and if they don't feel safe traveling, then that's perfectly understandable. And 40% locals, and we're doing about 35% of what we did before.
I just was curious, just because of the conversation that we were having. I would imagine it can be very frustrating for small businesses to see some of the things that have happened.
For sure.
It is. Small businesses employ an incredibly large amount of the employees, the workforce. And, the hospitality sector is 16 million people on the low end of the spectrum. A lot of those jobs are going to disappear. A lot of restaurants won't be able to keep operating. And if you have a razor thin margin, yesterday, restaurants don't necessarily operate with months of hundreds of thousands of dollars in the reserve in the bank. So something like this, without any assistance, you can see a lot of vacant storefronts. And
But you have the larger
the larger corporations
that have that money in the bank, and their CEOs are making millions of dollars, and they're getting a bailout whenever a small, people are like I said, we're fighting for crumbs. It's not okay.
It sounds like a pretty classic, American story of large corporations, taking in the haul of the earnings on the back of the working man, kind of that old yarn.
It's interesting you said that, because it's very American thing to do so at some point.
USA.
So you guys host a lot of LGBTQ friendly events. I know I've been to events here that the Nashville LGBT Chamber has hosted.
Dining Out for Life.
Dining Out for Life.
Yep.
What do you want to say to the members of our community who miss you guys and are trying to make it through this time right now?
We miss you, Queens. Get your ass in here safely, or order curbside. That's what I want to say to them. But first and foremost, we miss the shit out of y'all. It was that is our community that supported us when we first opened and really gave us the affirmation that we were welcome in this town, and that that we can just do it, and this is what we're supposed to be doing. It's amazing, and it's not only created a space for LGBT patrons to come in and feel safe and feel like they're in a second home, but also employees as well. We've had a lot of our team members now that are part of the LGBT community, Q community just as well, and are here because of that. And so it's a relationship that we don't take lightly, and that we miss. I would say a lot, a whole lot. So we fly that pride flag at our front door, and it'll be there. So whenever you're ready and you feel safe to come out, we'll be here for y'all.
Come out in more ways than
Exactly.
Coming up after the break, from humble beginnings to a realized dream.
So Brian and I have been together 15 years, and we're both in the restaurant industry while we were working our way through art school in Chicago.
Stay tuned. Out and About Nashville returns after a short break.
My schedule, it's hard to have a steady relationship, so I take PrEP, a once-a-day pill that prevents HIV. I go to the Music City PrEP Clinic. There's no judgment, no stigma. They make it easy.
I'm all about my health, but I don't want to take any chances. I heard a lot about PrEP, but I want to know the truth. At the Music City PrEP Clinic, I got all the answers I needed, and it was all free.
Visit us online and make a free and confidential appointment at musiccityprep.org.
I did it for me.
I did it for me.
Mikey and Brian started out as an underground supper in Chicago, and when they came to Nashville, they had a vision for the Mockingbird to create a warm and inviting atmosphere where everyone in the community felt safe and at home. And the restaurant was doing fantastic. Most restaurants fail in their first year, and they had survived for 3 years and were getting ready to have one of their biggest years yet when the COVID-19 crisis hit.
Talking about opening up this very special place that's come to be very special for the LGBTQ community, what was your vision and how did it come about?
Whoa, gosh, okay. So Brian and I have been together 15 years, and we're both in the restaurant industry while we were working our way through art school in Chicago. We started an underground supper in 2009, which is we would host these dinner parties out of our home, and Brian was the chef, and then I would kind of put together the table and do service, and was in charge of getting performers to entertain our guests at the end of the meal. Now, we were doing this at a secret location, but it was in Boys Town, which in Chicago is like ground zero for like homosexuals. And our very first dinner party we did, I invited all the who's who gays in Chicago to be there. And so at our core of this business we started together was the LGBT community, because we wanted their input on what we were doing. And who better to give straight up feedback with attitude than our community. And so from that dinner party, this was born. So we were doing our dinner parties for about 8.5 years before we got to open this brick and mortar restaurant here. And it happened because Brian ended up on an episode of Chopped, representing our underground supper in Chicago. Manit Chauhan was one of the judges on that episode. At the end, when he came out victorious, she asked him what his goal was with going on national television, and he told her that we were looking for investors for our first brick and mortar restaurant, and she said that she wanted to be that investor, and it kind of went from there. We had conversations. We came to visit Nashville, and we're like, this is actually a pretty cool town. It's not just hot chicken and country music. There's more to that. And one of the first questions we asked her was, well, moving to the South, is this something that we're going to have to say we're roommates? My roommate is the chef owner and I'm the operating partner. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, you hear that the South is not as gay friendly. And she was like, if anybody has a problem with that, you tell them to get the hell out of the restaurant. And I was like, okay, you're living down there and you're a woman of color from first generation here in the States. And if you're saying all this is fine, then we should have no problem. And it's been a community that we have looked to foster ever since we got here, with that in mind, knowing we had the backing of our business partners to be like, this is y'all's baby. This is going to speak from y'all's soul. And so at its core is an LGBT, Q spirit that this place has.
Yeah.
It's very evident.
Yeah.
And people that I talk to in our community feel very at home here.
Oh, good.
It's kind of like a second home.
Oh, I love that. That's been like that was the goal. That was the intention.
So, what adjustments did you make to the layout of the restaurant and to the menu when you were forced into this pandemic?
So we obviously, have tables that are spaced 6 feet apart, and we're lucky in the fact that we have 2 floors and a patio, so there's a little more elbow room to kind of stretch out and really maximize all the square footage of the dining room. We reduced the menu probably by about a third, down to kind of some of the cores and essentials, with some rotating, really seasonal items that are in there too, just to kind of hone in and focus. And if we're doing a more limited service, you just have more limited product coming through the door as well.
For sure. Well, there was a whole situation we had about sourcing in the food supply and some of the items we can get, and so that also forced us to have to revisit the menu.
The tornado didn't do anyone any favors in Nashville as well, and that hit a couple of local suppliers, their warehouses, so the whole supply chain has been kind of disrupted and has been shuffled around. So yeah, we've really reduced the menu. And then there's all the additional, kind of the physical altercations, and then all of the health mandates with the staff. So we have, sheets with a questionnaire, and that all the employees, anyone who enters the building fills out. We take the temperature, log all of that, and then just, all the practices of increased hand washing and things that on top of.
We've installed sanitation stations that have like antibacterial foam
all around the restaurant for both employee and for consumers' use. They're by the front door in the restrooms, and then in the more of the work areas as well. Yeah. So
this the signage we've had to put up about social distancing, and I have it on a clipboard because things were changing every freaking week. And initially I was kind of pissed off. I was like, this is ruining the decor of the restaurant.
And now it's just like, slap it up, I don't care.
Now
just come on, let's go.
Screw it. Just put up the signage. Like, forget trying to beautify it. Like, it is what it freaking is. And so you will see the signage everywhere. And that was not in our original plans of decor of the restaurant. And as a gay man, it irks the shit out of me. But it is a necessity. And as quick as things are changing, we need to have that signage so that everybody is aware of what the current situation is. But yeah, to the fact as well, like we had spent, my background is in graphic design, and so I designed the layout of the menu that we had, and the type of like menu folder that it's in, and all of that. Now that we're open for COVID, we have to have disposable menus or something that's digital. And so we have disposable. And so to get rid of like all of that design was like a couple of tears were shed, because I was like, how can I make this look remotely close to what our opening menu did to like fit our aesthetic? And the first week or two, I spent a lot of time trying to keep that aesthetic going. And then about 3 weeks in, I was like, screw it, just get the information on the piece of paper. It's gonna get crumbled up and thrown away anyway. And it's like, it's so many little details that were like so important just like a couple of months before are now it's moved. And like at the very top is safety and staying safe, mainly for our employees first and foremost, because if they are not okay and they catch something, then we won't be able to welcome patrons, and we would then also have to shut the restaurant. And if we have to shut it down for even like a day of service, that's not good. We will be
it's a tremendous amount of financial loss, and then there's like psychological and emotional barriers that you have to kind of struggle with as well. So that is a concern of what happens if someone falls ill or someone tests positive. There's not really a rule book on what to do.
Well, you have to sanitize everything, and
Well-
everybody has to get tested. So you have to. Unfortunately, we don't have a huge team because we weren't able to bring back a huge team because business doesn't dictate it, and neither does our checking account right now. So if one person in our small team tests positive, then we will have to have everybody that worked along that person go and get tested. And until their results come back, we can't have them here. And so that would knock out like 75% of our team. And so we wouldn't be able to operate just from that standpoint alone. Yeah, there is no current mandate that says if somebody tests positive, you have to shut everything down. It's just a matter of the workforce that we have on hand that would force us to do that. And so, yeah, it is. I'm going to file that under worst nightmares for sure.
Coming up on Out and About Nashville.
As times, like I said, kind of got a bit more tough, and we weren't getting as many orders, and we opened up all platforms just to get something going, any type of money in the bank, unfortunately.
You'll want to stay tuned for this. We'll be right back after a short break.
Wow, yeah.
Because the turnaround is so.
Yeah.
Do you guys work with Uber Eats, Grubhub, Postmates, any of that?
We do.
Since you had to change that, I'm sure that's been a help in some ways. I know that some people, restaurant owners, have complained that it takes a big chunk out of the revenue.
They take a huge chunk of revenue.
Yeah.
It's
About a third of it.
yeah. It
In full transparency, yeah, it's 30% of what they take. So if you have something that's $10 and your food cost on it is 25%, and then they take 30% of that as well, there's not much left. You're almost going to break even with what the product is. But then the alternative is to have it sit back there and risk spoilage. And so if you can even get your money's back worth, then you kind of throw yourself on that sword.
So you
unfortunately
guys do better if somebody calls the restaurant directly.
Correct. Yes.
And now through our website, you can order directly through our website as well, which goes straight into our computer system, prints up a ticket in the kitchen, and then it's ready for pickup.
Yes.
Right
So
away.
that's we were pushing that whenever we were doing curbside is to please call ahead. We had shut down our to-go platforms and we're only doing calls. And taking the payment information ourselves so that there was no third party involved in it. And as times, like I said, kind of got a bit more tough, and we weren't getting as many orders, and we opened up all platforms just to get something going, any type of money in the bank. Unfortunately, it was desperate times.
So you guys are serving dinner now. What percentage of patrons would you say is down from before the outbreak, as far as the people who are coming through here on a daily basis?
So we have about 30% of our previous volume.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've lost about 60 to 70%.
My goodness.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
It's pretty
Yeah.
bonkers.
It is.
Hopefully, it'll all start to trickle back.
I mean, it has to. Not hopefully, it has to. It's not sustainable. What we're doing is definitely not sustainable for sure. It's right now. I use kind of like the analogy of we're doggy paddling right now, and if we have a bad night, that's just another gallon of water poured over our heads. That's just making it even that much more tough to keep our heads above water. That's why we're so strict about these safety precautions, because if we were to fall into a lower phase and then have further restrictions or possibly a shutdown, it would be detrimental.
It's not just the short term, we could have to close the restaurant for a couple of days. Tomorrow, we might not be able to reopen the restaurant if the city as a whole has to take another step backwards, or if we have to go into a shutdown again. A lot of places just couldn't survive that.
What are some of the signature dishes that you can only get here that you guys still offer about those?
Ooh.
One of the appetizers, we have these little grilled cheese. It's a sourdough baguette that is filled with whipped brie and pepper jelly, and they're grilled and topped off with chimichurri. So they're very popular. We have a pimento cheese arancini with 2 different dipping sauces that are really great.
Brian is like such a fanatic about all things European. And so those, like, he was like, oh, we have to have like arancini on the menu. I'm like, what the heck is that? And he was like, oh, okay, well. And so he gave me the background on it, and it's Italian roots and whatnot. And it kind of makes sense since we're a modern diner with global takes on comfort food. What pimento cheese is a comfort situation, especially here in the South. And then adding it into an Italian type of preparation really kind of speaks to what our concept is. My favorite are the tachos, because I grew up in South Texas, and we have these things called Frito pies. And it's basically like Fritos topped off with like chili and then cheddar cheese. Mm-hmm. It is amazing. And so Brian, being my husband, and it happens to be he's a chef as well, would try to make me happy at times, because it's, happy Mikey, happy lifey. And so this is his version of like, let's make this so he'll shut up. And so the dish uses tater tots with lamb chili and then a beer cheddar that we make in-house. And so he's definitely fancified it a little bit, and that's okay, because I've also like grown a little sophisticated since my Frito pie days, and so I appreciate that. But it definitely just like it speaks to my soul. So that's one of my favorite appetizers, and it'll never leave the menu, ever. Right? Also, Reese Witherspoon put it in her book, Whiskey in a Teacup.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and like we had no idea she was going to even mention us, and she mentions that dish in there, and I was like, yes, Reese, we are like soul sisters. Like, you love the dish that was like made for me. So, we're kind of besties. JK, but that'd be awesome.
You guys just ran my glucose.
And we don't even get talking about cholesterol, because that's a whole different thing.
So about the drinks, what are some signature drinks that you have that people can come in and get that are your favorites? And how did they happen?
Well, the one that I really enjoy, especially right freaking now that we can't travel. So for my 40th birthday, Brian and I went to Havana, Cuba. And when we were there, every night we would end our evenings at this Hotel Nacional de Cuba. And we would sit outside and order just mojitos. Like, we were like, don't stop them from coming. And by the time you knew it, it was just like one of those moments where, you're feeling like, you're hot shit. And I'm like, Brian, just get a picture of me, like, see if you can get the moon in focus. And like, he would get these pictures, and I would have like mint stuck all in my teeth. It was like the most non-sexiest thing ever. But that memory is like just so special. And so we knew that we had to have a version of that drink on our menu when we opened the restaurant. And so we do. It's called Cuba and Fuego. And so it's our version of a mojito. So we use Havana Club rum. We have mint and lime that's been pureed and strained. That way no queen has to worry about having the green leaves stuck in their teeth like I did. And a jalapeno simple syrup to add a little bit of feistiness from my Mexican background. And it's a drink that I see, and when I serve it, it takes me back just for like a second. I'm there, and it puts a smile, and then I got to get back to what the hell I was doing before. But it's one of the drinks I think is like one of our most special drinks, and it'll definitely like make you feel a little loosey goosey. But it is really and truly like our heart and soul that's in the restaurant, not just in the decor. It's in the dishes, it's in the drinks, it's in the presents. And so that's what we really want people, and we want to translate when guests come in to visit us. And to hear that the people that you've spoke with and that are in your circle say that that's how they feel when they come in.
It does mean a lot.
It does
really
mean a lot.
terrific.
Especially right now, whenever we feel like we're just barely breathing. That really is going to give me probably the gusto I need to get through this shift. If
It's
not,
all the
like,
feels.
all the feels. Hashtag all the feels. So thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much for
Thank
having
you
us.
so
I really
much.
appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank
of
you.
course.
Now, at the time of this interview, the Mockingbird is open for dinner only Wednesdays through Sundays from 4 to 9 p.m. And they're hoping that more people will come out. They miss everybody and they want to send love to the LGBTQ community. Brian Sullivan reporting for Out and About Nashville.